G'day ladies and gentle tubers. I've got an outdoor wok kitchen and 22-inch woks. Over winter I left my woks outside thinking that I had seasoned them thoroughly and that they would not rust. However, that was not the case. Because of the damp, a little bit of mold started to grow on the beautifully seasoned surface, and that started to cause the rust. So you'll see a scene here in a little bit of me using an angle grinder with an 80 grit flat disc on it to grind out the rust, and a sander with a 100 grit sand pad on the back of the wok to get rid of the rust. And then finally I used a stainless steel wire brush to remove the scoring from the sanding. This is important because what it does is it lays flat those bits of metal that are raised by the abrasive. That will help me get a nice continuous seasoned surface on these woks yet again. And then this time over winter I will take them inside and not leave them outside to get destroyed. So the method I'm using here to season these woks once they've been rubbed back and prepared is the same I would use if I was buying a brand new wok. I use hot soapy water and steel wool to clean the surface inside and outside thoroughly, and to make sure as much of the carbon is removed, or if it's a new wok, any of the protective surface that the manufacturer puts in place. Following that, I'm going to heat the wok up all the way around until it is blue from heat. Not going to add any oil until the whole thing is blue all the way to the rim. Then I'm going to add a very fine layer of oil and let that smoke off. So it'll get very smoky and then it'll stop being smoky. Once it stops being smoky for about a minute, I will then reapply oil. Probably do that 2 or 3 times depending on how the color turns out. I'm looking for a really deep sort of caramelly bluey brown color that we'll see in the end. And then I also want to do that on the back of this wok. The issue with having an outdoor wood-fired wok is that there are certain salts and chemicals that are released by the burning of firewood or charred coal, and that will increase the chances for the bottom of the wok to rust. So it's a bit of a losing battle, but I am going to season the outside of it just to give it that little bit of extra coating for the time being. What you want to do when you're using your wok is, once you're finished with it, clean it with hot soapy water and that scourer again if it's thick and crusted with food and you need to use a scourer, or just with a soaked up sponge, and then allow it to dry over the heat again and apply another thin layer of oil where possible. This will keep your wok seasoned for a prolonged period of time, and it'll keep it non-stick. But here we go, I've got the fire going. I'm going to need to let it heat up even further, chuck another set of firewood on it, get the fire really hot to do this. You can see the blue starting to come through. We need that to cover the whole pan. Just going to move the pan around to evenly distribute that heat and get that same blue color across the whole surface. This typically takes about 20 to 30 minutes on an open fire, depending on the heat. I've got this one pretty hot, so hopefully it only takes about 15 or so. This wok burner is set up to be relatively smoke free, although the wind has shifted since I set up to film, and I was hoping that the smoke that comes out the door was going to travel off in the other direction, but it's not, so I should have used the other burner, but here we are. If you want to see how I built these, there's a link in your top right now that you can click to watch the construction. It was the first video I ever did, so it might be a little slow and not very interesting, but it's worth a watch. I'll also leave a link on where to find these woks. You can get them on Amazon. It was a lot harder to find them when I initially bought them a couple of years ago, but they seem to have gone up in popularity. Alright, that's the surface glued. I use this workshop paper towel. I think it's woven with cotton, so it's a lot more coarse and heat resistant. It doesn't fall apart when you put oil on it. I'm just going to give this a quick wipe out because, as you can see, a bit of soot has fallen in, just dirtied it up, and we don't want any of that mixed in with the oil. I'm using canola oil. I think canola oil is about the best oil to use for this. You want a very high temperature oil. And you only want a small amount. If you put too much in, it just turns into this cakey, horrible surface. You want a very light coat and build that coat up over time. And then if you're too slow, you burn the paper towel. You'll know when to apply more oil because the smoke will start to disappear. Again, you want to go around and evaporate that oil. So this oil coating, you're basically turning the oil into a plastic. It's all plastics are made out of some form of oil or hydrocarbon, and we're basically giving this thing that plastic or polymer coating to allow it to be non-stick and to give it that protective coating for rust. Now that's a good half dozen coatings, and you can see, or you might not be able to see because it's getting really dark out, but we've got quite a nice darkened surface on the wok now. Now the difficult part for an open fire wok is doing the same thing on the bottom, because it'll now be covered in ash, but this is what we have to do now. Now with the underside done, the cooking surface is now going to be covered with a little bit of ash as well. because it's been exposed to the open fire. So we're going to do one more coat on the inside. Alright, so now that my wok is sufficiently seasoned, I am going to leave you guys with this and cook my family chicken stir fry dinner. If you'd like to see a recipe on chicken stir fry, it's in the top right at the moment, and we'll see you next time. Thank you very much. Please like, subscribe, and I'll see you again on Build, Grow, Play.